Greetings once again, my friends. I am Drak, and wow, this video has been in the making since August. And unfortunately, this is now around the time when I could actually get to it because of vacations or whatever. Welcome to my vlog on Voltron Legendary Defender Season 3. So it's already been out for a while, and in fact, I need to get this out sooner rather than later because Season 4 is about to debut in about a couple of weeks. So I have been able to finish all 7 episodes of Voltron Legendary Defender, and so I've tried to kind of establish themes here, and I'm hoping that I'm not setting a double standard here, at least with this theme. So with Season 1, it was basically getting everything started, establishing the characters, establishing the new flow of the series, and for Season 2, it was setting up for transitions, but also gaining more power, gaining more knowledge, being able to sync better with their lions. Season 3 is definitely the transitional season. I would definitely say that the theme for the season overall is transitions. Now, normally in these vlogs, I would go episode by episode and explain to you guys what I thought of each of them, but after, mainly because of time, but also because I think it actually would be better to just go into an overall review rather than just doing episode by episode, because I know that a lot of people are still getting mad about spoilers, and unfortunately those will happen if I have to do episodic reviews. So now that I have watched all of the season and compiled my opinions, this is still going to be spoiler heavy, but it's based on the concept of you have watched the entire season, not necessarily up to this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with what I think are the better transitions here, and that is character development. So character development in this season compared to others is the fact that, well, Shiro is missing for a good portion of this season. He does eventually come back, but Shiro is missing, and therefore the Lions have to transition. And in fact, we go into the... I know that I do know I said this in the Season 2 review, that I hope that they stayed with this Lion order, and then on top of that, kept Allura in more of a magical sense as kind of a counter to Hagar. Well, I was officially wrong, because this season sets up the team as a lot of people know it, with Keith becoming the pilot of the Black Lion, with Lance becoming the pilot of the Red Lion, and Allura being brought into the Paladins as the pilot of the Blue Lion. Now, I can't remember if I actually said this in Season 2, but I may have said that I hope that they don't... I know I said I hope they don't do this because it would be a bad idea. And I still kind of stick to that, although now that I've watched Season 3, I don't think it is, because it gives whole new sets of challenges and trials for these characters to go through. Season 2's trial for Keith was the fact that his origins were now being brought to light, and he was very questionable because he was actually of Galra origin, specifically with the Blade of Marmora. He's kind of your connection in being able to find the blade, and we also had to deal with Allura's distrust of him. Now we have a whole new dynamic where, kind of set up in the beginning of Season 2, of Shiro basically saying, you know, if there's anybody else who could lead this team, it is you, and Keith not believing him, and thus basically getting thrust into that role and having not a whole lot of faith in himself to be able to do that. Unlike the original Keith, who took on that, or who was in that role from the beginning, this is actually a cool transition to be able to see Keith go from being the hothead, from being the one that rushes off and does everything on his own, to having to rely on the others as a team to be able to get through the hard times. And I do like a lot of the transitional stuff they've done with Keith, where he just thinks he sucks as a leader. He wants to be able to get Lotor's the target here. He wants to be able to go get him, but he has to rely on the other 4 to be able to do it right, and therefore kind of gets overly aggressive to compensate for the fact he sucks as a leader, and he knows he does. So I like that transition happened, but eventually he does get better, especially when they bring back Shiro into the equation, and he has to lead because, I was actually expecting if Shiro ever did come back, the order would resume itself, and that's not the case. Shiro is now kind of a sidelined member because he is no longer the paladin of the Black Lion. I don't think they solved the whole blazing sword thing, though. Like, I really did also think that Shiro would bring back the Black Bayard, and he didn't. But he kind of did, because now Lance is using the Red Bayard, and Keith is using the Black Bayard. That's a weird one. So yeah, that's Keith's development, and I do like it. Lance's development is actually a direction that I didn't think they'd go. I think he would resume to be the hothead because he never agreed with Keith. They always fought in the previous seasons, and now they took him in a direction I didn't think they'd go, and I like it, and that is of humility. He actually has gained more of a bond with Keith. Because he's the leader, as well as being able to realize that maybe he can actually hold the team back with his hot-headedness, and has to acknowledge that. And I thought that was really beautiful, considering because if you would ask me, like, the last person in this team who would actually be more based in humility, it wouldn't have been Lance. Lance basically sets himself up as the hothead, full of himself guy, and in the last episode, or the last episode in particular, I think shows that off, where Shiro comes back, and so Lance pulls Keith aside and says, well, but if Shiro's back, then somebody needs to, we need to rearrange the lions, and he actually offers to step down as the Red Lion because he thinks Allura would be more of a help than he would be. And I liked that moment. I thought that was actually a really great direction to take a character like Lance, considering that he's in a new lion and therefore kind of has a new direction. Sure, he's the sniper. Sure, he's the marksman. And that's great and all, but I like the fact that they, instead of making him more hot-headed or making him more like Keith, they instead went down the humility route. I thought that was really awesome. Allura is the next one on the list, and she is the more interesting because she's been fairly confident in the previous seasons, not only in the cause, in the fact that the Galra are evil, hence why we had the whole dialogue angle with her and Keith, but then you present her with a lion. She is now a paladin of Voltron, and the confidence just leaves. She can't, so the first couple of episodes, they show she can't control the lion. And it's because she's not syncing with the lion. Like, the viewer knows that. The viewer knows she's not syncing. She thinks she is because she's in the cockpit, but she's not. She's not properly syncing with the blue lion. And it's starting to show in the way that she handles combat. And so I actually like that concept where she was, even though she had a lot of doubts and she wanted to make sure that they could win, she was still fairly confident in her abilities to be able to power the castle, to be able to lead a resistance against Zarkon. She was fairly confident in those, but then you put her in the Blue Lion and all of that leaves, and you get to see her struggle with, oh, I've tried commanding it, I've tried pleading with it, I've tried doing all of these things. What is it going to take for you to work with me, Lion? And then finally having that realization of, you haven't properly synced yet, and you haven't properly asked for help. So I did like that concept where she may have been a little bit hot-headed. I mean, obviously with the whole Galra thing, but she did ooze confidence in the situations that mattered until this moment. And it made her a powerful character because of it. So I really did like that idea. I liked the fact that Allura had to go through that little trial, and it was something that we didn't realize that she had to do. Another thing that I actually do want to bring up with Allura in development was one in particular episode where they do go to an alternate reality, and we find out basically what would have happened if Allura didn't go into stasis and woke up thousands of years later, and instead watched her father die and took the fight to Zarkon. And it's actually really creepy how that goes out, because the cool part of that whole thing is, that's kind of how dictators are born. So we know that out of anger, after losing her father, King Althor, she took the fight to the Galra, and she won. But not only did she win, she basically put in place a system to take over the universe and enslave every race by basically taking away their free will. And that's the scary part of that whole thing is, we know Allura to be compassionate. We know Allura to know that life is always the way to go, that free will is always the solution. And then we got to see what would actually happen if Allura was stricken by grief. Yes, she would win the war, but at the price of becoming Zarkon herself. So I did actually like that alternate reality. We don't actually get to see alternate Allura. Apparently she's long since passed on. Or well, that does make sense, but she's long since passed on, but her oppressive government is still in place. And so it's a scary thing to see in that episode, but it's also really awesome to be able to see Allura's reaction of, yeah, this is exactly what would have happened if I had turned down the path of anger instead of the path of compassion. I thought that was a great moment for Allura. Even though she didn't get to see an alternate reality version of herself, she got to see what her kingdom would be if she went down that path. The final one that I want to go into for character development, like I said, Shiro comes back eventually. Like, we find out that he ended up in a Galra base and is able to escape. And I have a feeling that'll be a plot in season 4 because there's a lot of questionable things about it, but his character hasn't really changed. Although I do want to point this out. In the alternate reality episode, Shiro is instead Sven. And people might remember in the first season, I was a little disappointed I didn't get Sven with the horrible Swedish accent. And in this one, we actually got the guy who plays Shiro to do a horrible Swedish accent. It was great. And so I'm glad that they did that. But aside from that, Shiro's character doesn't really change. And neither do Hunk or Pidge. I would actually dare say that these three are the ones, along with Karan, really no character development happened. And that's not necessarily saying a bad thing. They are who they are, and that actually helped with the elements that were being changed within the team. The other one that I want to get into to kind of wrap this up is my thoughts on Prince Lotor. So I was excited when season 2 announced that we were going, when we got Hagar saying summon Prince Lotor, because I was like, yes, we get to have this awesome character. And holy crap, I didn't even know what I was walking into. So the best way that I know how to describe it is like where Zarkon was the oppressive one. The original series just takes Zarkon and Lotor and says they're both oppressive in their own right. In this case, though, Lotor takes the more compassionate route, and I don't want to say compassionate, but he tries to be more of a charismatic leader than Zarkon. Zarkon was just, we will win through the Iron Fist. And instead, Lotor just basically says, we can all win this together. We can all work together to be the Galra Empire that my father has envisioned. Who's with me? And that's kind of how Lotor wins, or Lotor rules, so to speak. He's still trying to earn the trust of the Galra at that point. The other cool part about Lotor is that, so you have that, but you also have the subtle, conniving manipulator that he is, and the warrior that he tends to be, not only in front but also behind the scenes. He's very ruthless. He's very dominating, and we get to see that in so many different ways. Not only with the Galra themselves, but also being able to see it with the lions. Where, in particular, the episode where Allura comes to sync with the Blue Lion. This is mostly where we deal with a lot of that character development, and part of that is because Lotor takes them to a remote planet and just basically hunts them and tries to herd them like cattle to capture the lions. And it was a really cool aspect to be able to see this happen with Lotor, as well as being able in his interaction. So he has a team which I have a feeling is going to come into play later because Lotor has made his own Voltron in the past, and they do kind of hint that maybe he's doing that now. And he does have 4 other team members that are 4 other subordinates that I think would become his team. I liked it. I also like his team because I do believe that in a lot of cases they are counteractions of a member of the Voltron team. Especially in the fact that now we don't have Shiro anymore, we have Keith as the leader. Lotor is a really good counter to Keith. And I don't remember all of their names right off the bat, but there's a alien Amazon woman that's more of a counter to Hunk. There's a subtle, like, commander-ish type that I believe is more of a solid counter to Lance as being a loyal second hand or a loyal right hand. We have a chameleon-like espionage character that I would dare say is more a counter to Allura than to Pidge, and that's saying something. And then we also have another one that's brash and cocky, and I actually think would be more of a counter to Pidge in the fact that that's the opposing personality to Pidge. So I like the fact that they're a counter to the Voltron Paladins that we know. And that's why, in essence, I actually feel like Shiro does have to be thrown out of the equation because Lotor doesn't fit with Keith, or with Shiro. He fits better with Keith. And now we can actually, what I'm hoping with this is that maybe Shiro then tries to go and establish another Voltron team. I would really love to see multiple Voltron teams in this series, if they can make it work, but it's completely up to them. But I will give major compliments to Lotor. He's been an amazing villain for us to be able to follow this season, and I hope they have plenty more good storylines with him, especially considering that the season ends with now Lotor having opposition from Zarkon and Hagar. So I'm really liking the possibility of infighting within the Galra as well as the Voltron Paladins. The other thing too that I should mention, and that's just going to be kind of a wrap up because I know this video is getting long, but it's an overall review, is the last episode, which was basically a history, like a flashback episode to the original Paladins of Voltron, which included Zarkon as the Black Lion Paladin and King Alfor as the Red Lion Paladin. I found that very interesting. Alfor is the right hand of Zarkon, just as Lance is to Keith. And it was a really great origin story that I wanted to finally see, but here's the problem with it. I wanted to see it a season ago. And now that it's here, it kind of falls flat aside from the fact that now we know why Hagar is the way she is, because we find out that she is actually a former Altean scientist who then studied into quintessence and studied too far. She took science too far and thus kind of got consumed by it and therefore became Hagar. The same thing with Zarkon. Now we kind of get an origin for how Hagar and Zarkon are the way they are. And again, it's fine, but to me, it's more of it falls flat because the majority of that episode I wanted a season ago. I wanted to be able to see the former Paladin Zarkon and see the counteraction between him now and him then. And the reason that we ultimately got this episode was to set up season 4 and the fact that Lotor now has Hagar and Zarkon to contend with, along with the other Paladins. So I do like the fact that now we know why Hagar is the way she is and why she can manipulate magic and why she cares about quintessence. The only thing that makes that fall flat a little bit is now that we have this outside influence of beings from a parallel dimension, possibly possessing Zarkon and Hagar. I almost wanted them to originally just they became power hungry for some reason, and unfortunately now we know it's because of outside influence. So I don't know how much that's going to play into things. Obviously, season 4 will tell us more. But to wrap things up, basically, if you guys aren't watching Voltron Legendary Defender, it's amazing. It's such a breath of fresh air compared to the original Voltron. It's funny because like I love the original Voltron as a kid, mainly because it got me to buy toys and it got me invested in each episode, being able to see the lion save various planets from Zarkon's threat. But this series is like the Voltron I needed as an adult, because not only do I have, 4 lions becoming one giant super robot, but I also have tons of character development. And I actually do have plots of campaigns trying to retake planets, trying to retake the galaxy from the Galra. And therefore, like where the original Voltron was there for me and works for me as a kid, this works for me as an adult. And it's simply because it gives me not only the cool visual eye candy of a giant super robot, but it also gives me the additional rich candy of character development, story development, and so on and so forth. So if you guys aren't already watching this stuff, there's 3 seasons available. You should be, especially if you're Avatar or Korra fans. It's the same guys who write it. And I look forward to doing another vlog with you guys in the next month. Next 3 to 4 weeks on Voltron Legendary Defender Season 4. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for continuing to like, comment, subscribe to all of my content. And if you haven't and you're brand new, please give that a consideration, because I do provide content, not just these vlogs, but also Let's Play content, reviews. There's pretty much something for everybody. And of course, I will see you guys next time for the next video, especially the next vlog where I discuss Season 1 of Marvel's Defenders. See you guys next time.